Thanks, guys. Sorry for that. I was kind of nervous about this, thinking something's going to go wrong. I'm just going to have to roll with it. So, yeah, here we are, rolling with it. And, yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me here. I've got all the music queued up. And hopefully that should also play nicely through the old live stream. And I might just get started because, you know, there's quite a few songs to get through. And as some of you have mentioned in the chat, this will be archived. So good stuff. I'll get started here with the first track on the album. It's called Inner World. And yeah, if you've got any questions, chuck them in while it's playing. And yeah, I'll see you on the other side. Okay, here we go. First track. So many clues, so much blue in it, so much hot light going down, going down. Beneath the noise, beneath the noise. Sniff the walls of the inner world, the inner world, the inner world. Feet cold and wet with dew, fingers electric with knowing what to do. Ah, man, it's in a loop. I'll take that off in a minute. Okay. Well, yeah, thank you for your question. In a minute, my phone is now playing the sound. Teething troubles, teething troubles. Yeah, thank you for your question, The Void Inclusive. And yeah, what drove me towards this kind of more classical instrumentation? It was cast your mind back to COVID. I mean, ultimately, we kind of were meeting our neighbours weirdly for the first time in COVID because, you know, I don't know about you guys, we're relatively private. And although we have a kid that's 9, you know, and there are other kids in the neighbourhood, we didn't really extensively hang out and sort of play so much. But during COVID, of course, we all kind of got to know each other so much better. And that's when me and my wife really started spending a lot more time with Ji Hei Jung and Lee Vinson, who literally live across the road, have a kiddo that's a couple of years younger than ours. And yeah, we started hanging out. And Ji Hei, oh, I should put my timer on. I set it for 5. Ji Hei happens to be an exceptionally talented marimba player, percussion player in general, very, very exceptional marimba player. And Lee used to play in the Boston Symphony, so, you know, not too shabby. And just spending more time with them, I just started to, like, you know, be more curious about their instruments and also become a little bit more aware of the kind of things that were happening in the composition for solo marimba, things that had been completely out of my, you know, I had no sense of that before. And I think, you know, on a similar sort of note, I got to spend a fair bit of time with Rob Berger, who's another neighbour of mine. So this is very much a sort of neighbourhood story, which is kind of amazingly lucky for me that I have such good neighbours. And yeah, I kind of just got inspired by the idea of like, how could I kind of start to use these tones in my music and not just only, you know, the familiar ones, the kind of roads I've traveled fairly often already. Yeah, I'm definitely into exploration as a rule, I would say, even if my releases don't necessarily sort of show my full breadth of interest. I certainly wanted to try something here, and yeah, it was just tremendous fun to kind of get to experiment and imagine these instruments working, and then finally have a chance to record them. And I mean, the whole nature of the record is it's based around words that my wife Lindsay Rome wrote, and this case is no exception. This song, so something about the marimba and its intimacy, kind of, and its darkness. You know, it's kind of, for me, the marimba is quite a dark. It is a dark tone. It's actually a very hard instrument to record. Um, it's a really like magical and kind of alluring tone when you can capture it, and I just felt like it was a good choice to kind of, you know, be a partner with her lyrics. So yeah, that, and like there's a lot of use of the sort of Prophet 5 synthesizer towards the end that Rob Berger was playing, and yeah, it's been a wild ride. It is somewhat of a reinvention, and I understand that some of you, like you, Amy, are like, you know, it must be a shocker in a way to sort of hear me in a more kind of classical setting, even like with my voice in a much more, yeah, in a much more, well, in a different tonality and a different sort of mindset of delivery. That was very deliberate as well, because I just kind of felt like, I don't know, every time you sing is obviously a performance, and I think I have a total rush of pleasure when I'm singing like in a soul style. And it's kind of a very familiar thing to me after all these years. But I was wondering if there was maybe something in my early days of singing, like when I used to be in like choirs and do different things with my voice, whether I could revisit and maybe kind of take on what I've learned as a singer and like kind of find something new. So that was it. I talk about filing it under challenging myself. I've never been one to orchestrate music, and I've never been one to really contemplate deeply changing my vocal tone, because those two things are kind of like ripping everything up and starting over. But in this case, it just felt like the backdrop of COVID and everything. It really did feel like now's the time to literally start again. I'm not saying that this will be the only sound I ever make going forward, but I wanted to try it, and there's certainly a level of growth there. Like you say, Amy, I feel like I grew tremendously just sort of making this happen, and I appreciate everyone listening to it and with an open mind. Hopefully you get something from it. I'll play the next track now before my timer runs out. I think I had 5 minutes before I started it. But this track is called Return of the Repressed, and it's more of a opportunity to listen to a sound source that also totally kind of captivated me. Like I said, I spent a lot of time like hanging out with Rob Berger, and he's a man who's collected wonderful esoteric instruments over the years. Two of them that really kind of blew my mind were the Orchestron, which plays these optical sound discs, and another one called Chamberlain, which is pretty well known, the sort of early incarnation of the Mellotron. And this song features kind of a heavy amount of the Orchestron, the flutes. I'm partial to a flute. This one's Return of the Repressed. There's just a couple of songs on this album that used my old Steinway upright piano. I mean, it sounds really fancy, but and it was a lovely piano. That unfortunately I couldn't get it into this new studio because it was just too tall. But it's a cranky old thing, super strange action that would where the sort of black keys would go under the white keys and stuff. It wasn't happy in a lot of ways. And it could only really play these sort of very sort of sustain heavy tracks, and I would say in a lot of ways it sort of guided the nature of this album, because alongside meeting Jihei and Rob across the way, I also met Pascal Leboeuf, who's a huge part of this record, and he was gracious enough to take me under his wing as a piano student, and I would take these Zoom lessons from him when he was at Princeton. And then he and his wife moved here to Nashville, and we could have them in person, which was a real treat. And yeah, I started to stretch out a bit, play on this Steinway. And there's only 2 songs actually that feature the piano in the end as a recorded instrument. And man, it was a treat to get this one down. I mean, I've always been really interested and have experimented a lot with tapes, and this one has like a special sort of tape treatment on the piano where it kind of is going through like some phase and some double tracking, and it sort of has that kind of weird, dreamy, washed out quality to it, and like that kind of fades into the tape loops of the orchestron. Like man, it's a funny thing, and I think every now and again this album kind of gave me sort of a window into a whole other universe of me. And this is definitely something that I truly love doing these days. It's just kind of playing with instruments that really like speak to me emotionally, I suppose. I think so many of the things someone asked earlier about the lack of electronics. There are electronics on this. I do find that sometimes when I'm faced with electronic sounds, much as I love them, it can be hard sometimes to sort of get the emotion. And like one of the things that really changed my life was sitting with the piano for the first time and only doing that. Literally like all of the rest of my studio was irrelevant, to all intents and purposes. I was just sat and consumed for the first time ever by just the piano, which obviously so many players and instrumentalists will be like, well, yeah, of course, you sit with the piano. But I never did that. So this was my chance to sort of let the piano be the boss. So it was nice to be able to feature this instrument here. Someone's asking, are there any credit lists available? There are some credits available. Thank you for the kind words about the recording production. It was the majority of this stuff was recorded at my home studio and also at Sound Emporium here in Nashville. We did like 2 days at Sound Emporium to track a lot of the more orchestral-ish pieces. Not hardly orchestral, really. It's a select. It's more like chamber music. But yeah, we had the marimba, we had the organ, we had synthesizers, vibraphone, various percussion instruments, and my voice. We did a lot of that at Sound Emporium, and then that track though I just played was all done at my place, and I mixed the record like an idiot. It's definitely something that was a wild challenge, but hey, I also really enjoyed doing that, I can't lie. And that's how you learn, isn't it? By doing. Anyway, this is another track called How Do I Land, and this is something that was quite an involved process to track. We spent a large part of the first day at Sound Emporium doing this one, and man, I would have going back, had I had the opportunity to sort of, if I could do it all again, I would have spent more time at Sound Emporium at the big studio, as it were, because this one we spent some hours on, and I think it kind of really shows. And yeah, here it is, without me talking too bloomin' much. This is How Do I Land? Yeah. Someone was asking about why Sound Emporium, the Void Inclusive. Thanks for that. Yeah, I've loved working there. I've done a few records there actually as a producer, worked with Alan Stone there, and have tracked various things, including for my album Building a Beginning. We tracked Daru Jones there, the drums, and it's a great spot. It's very dry and controlled, the live room, but it's also extremely close to my house. I mean, it's just, I suppose, about a 4-minute drive. So it's wildly convenient. And yeah, I just like the kind of low-key ambience that it has. It is a very proper room, especially sonically, acoustically, but it's quite relaxed. And I find myself a little stressed when I go to big studios. I'm not really meant for it, I don't think. Or at least I haven't really had enough experience and exposure to those rooms where I feel like I can do my best work there. I often just feel a little overwhelmed by the situation and how much money it's all costing and so on. and that can sort of lead me to make conservative decisions and not really kind of stretch out as much as I'd like to. But in this case, and actually when we went to the Sound Emporium, I had this crazy idea that I was going to surround everyone with these. Well, I was going to have a binaural head in the middle of the studio, surrounded by 4 speakers. And Adams were kind enough to lend me these speakers for the event. So I had 4 pretty nice full range speakers, sort of pointing at the binaural head. And my idea was you'd hear the acoustic sound of, say, a vibraphone or marimba, but also, that would reach the head just like it would normally in an acoustic setting. But I'd also send the marimba separately into some processing and then feed that into the speakers. So the speakers would sort of augment the acoustic sound. And like you'd get this sort of trippy, sort of 3D new experience. And it took a long time. And thanks to our engineer and assistant engineer Louis, they just worked. I don't think he went home. I think he sort of stayed up all night setting this up, because it took an incredible amount of work, because you needed microphones that would be going to the recording and microphones that would go to the processing, and every setup needed that, and it was just a real technical nightmare. In the end, it was so hard, man. It was one of those things where it was very ambitious, and I think if I'd had a week at the Sound Emporium, we could have spent an entire day just, testing that and working out how it was good and how it was like feedback nightmare, and doing all the various things that you'd need to test it. But as it was, I used very little of it. But hey, those are the things you sort of learn when you go about doing all these things. Still, I had a great time doing that one. That features the Sound Emporium. Another great thing about the Sound Emporium, to hype the place a little bit. Anyone who's coming to record in Nashville, I can recommend it. It has a really nice chamber, and the sound that you hear on those sleigh bells is, I think it's me playing them with the door of the chamber open. So there's the bass drum, and then I would be sitting there by the open door just going, because the sleigh bells themselves are quite quite a weak sound. They don't have that majesty. But one thing I learnt is that the bass drum with the sleigh bells as a combination, that's very satisfying. And I also learned that the bass drums that they have in orchestral music, the Grand Casa, is just something completely outside. I never knew just how majestic that instrument was and what skill it takes to play it. Lee Vincent, who's on the record, is a true beast. But yeah, okay, here we go. I'm going to carry on now. This is a very... I actually wish that in this stream, maybe whilst this is playing, I'll try and dig it up. This is an interesting song. It's called Choraleme, which is a bit of an awkward name, but it came from sort of, you might be able to almost work it out. I was starting out this song, it was an a cappella, essentially, a multi-track vocal, and I kind of was picturing strings in my mind and singing these lines and just sort of feeling it and improvising, essentially. Had no structure or plan. I was just kind of responding to myself. It was just a really fun day, a particularly satisfying day. And again, thanks to Pascal Leboeuf, he sat there and he transcribed my audio files into something that could be played by a cello. And we had a student cellist called Griffin, who came in, and we sat there for like about 5 hours, like multi-tracking her, doing my multi-tracks again, but on a cello. And we kind of repositioned her around the Neumann head microphone for each take, so that it kind of gave a bit more of a natural sound stage, a bit more of a, a wild approximation. I mean, not a wild approximation, but a little bit of an acoustic approximation of like multiple cellists. Considering we only had one, we had to sort of do some trickery, and she played it differently with different techniques. Anyway, this one came out really, really well, I think, and I'm particularly proud of this one because it was something that was very homegrown and is a very kind of close approximation to the sort of music I hear in my mind. And I don't think I've been able to, bring that to the world so directly. All thanks to Pascal and all the great musicians. It's called Choraleme. Yeah. I mean, you know what? I may have found it. Let's see if I can. This is either going to work or be completely the wrong version. Let's see what I have here. Ah, this is the original. This is how it started, just me at the piano. Let's sort of see what happened. kind of similar. I mean, it's essentially the same music, but just all vocal and piano. Oh, there's an error there in Pro Tools, but just you get a sense. That's that's the way it started on that song. They're all quite different, and that's the way that particular track worked. And just up the buffer size on Pro Tools. That's weird that it did that. It didn't want to play it. But yeah. Let's see if I've got some questions. Oh, did I sing into the binaural head? I did. There was you'll hear some actually on this next track. In fact, one of the only songs that kind of made the cut, that kind of used my experimental setup, where I was trying to use the binaural head and the speakers and all of that, was this song. It was essentially me in a control room with a microphone, and singing through my effects that I'd made. It's kind of hard to explain. It was like a kind of weird quadraphonic panner that I took ages to make. Did all this work in Touch OSC, and it was a massive Max for Live extravaganza. And it's typical me. I spent months developing this panner that's super custom and amazing, and I still have it, and it's a really cool thing. But in the end, it was just very hard to put into practice, and sort of it's kind of stressful when you've got a bunch of musicians waiting around and you're experimenting essentially with things. But yeah. Oh man, you know what is funny? The Void Inclusive says he'd like to see me do a piano performance. But I've lost all of my chops. I've really kind of got into a bit of a groove there for a while. Playing the piano every day, I was flowing. I was feeling confident in a way. I almost could imagine performing something live. But now I feel like I'm right back at the beginning again. I mean, it's not a horrible feeling, but yeah, it would be tricky for me. Actually, Pascal, when we did this live performance at Turner Hall here in Nashville, he was saying, "Oh, you should play the piano on this." And I was like, "Oh my God, there's no way." There's no way. Especially when I had Pascal there, and he's just so incredibly talented. Pocket cellist. That's right. Yeah, hey, it was really hard for... thanks for that, Funk Node. It was, definitely a challenge for Griffin to work her way through, playing a piece that was essentially a freestyle, and that kind of when you start reconstructing a multi-track vocal with nothing, in a way, it's a bit like a sort of Bob Ross, I suppose, for American, listeners, viewers. Yeah, they'll know what I'm talking about. In the beginning, it's just like a bunch of abstract lines, and and then it slowly comes into focus. Oh, hey there, Fair. Microphone. What microphone do we use? Well, there was quite a lot of microphones used throughout the process, I would say. Mostly for my vocal, I used U47. The binaural head got a lot of action, and then we used a bunch of microphones at the Sound Emporium, a lot of RCA 44s, and also a couple of Neumann M269s on the piano. We had a nice selection of instruments and mics. We did well. Now this one's called Unmasking, and it's another sort of orchestron recording into tape loops. So a relatively short piece that kind of bookends some of these more intense pieces, but it does feature the vocals going through the quadraphonic experimental setup, and it has a nice sort of kind of swimmy tone. Yeah, Unmasking. Here it is. Yeah, fun. U47, yeah, that's right. Lovely microphone. It's funny, I remember interviewing Nigel Godrich for the podcast, and I was asking him, I was like, Nigel, what do you do for recording marimba? Because I was having an awful time trying to capture it. He goes, I'd start with the U47. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. If you can put a U47 on something, if you have access to one that's good, you can maybe, even if you don't use it in the end, you can sort of use it as a sense, give you a sense of what you're dealing with. And, it's never too shabby to use a U47. Now, this next song, it's called Last Day of Mourning. And this is a song where Rob Berger, who usually plays keyboards, he actually hopped on the marimba. And we had Lee Vincent on cymbal, just ride cymbal. It's important, the ride cymbal. And I think Jihei was on vibraphone here. And I should mention the upright bass player, Ethan Jadowitz. I think I pronounce his name wrong all the time, but forgive me, Ethan. But yeah, that was another musician that really transformed this record, and I had so much fun tracking with him. We would sort of do essentially overdubs on things that were already in place. In this case, that was what happened. I really love this song. This is one where this is the only song actually where I tracked the vocal live in the studio with everyone playing. So this was a full live performance, just the way it was, no edits. It was just a one take, and I was in a booth with my mic, and I think I had my phone at the time. I didn't even know the lyrics particularly. I'm awful with lyrics. I can never make it through a performance without messing something up. So yeah, I was there hanging on. It's always that real tense thing where everyone is trying to play free and express themselves, but it's also very new, and there's a fragility to that, and I think we really caught that on this one. This one's called Last Day of Mourning. Oh, here we go. When the winter sun illuminates my dirty window pane, and breathing in its wretched pain, oh, I touched the promise around my neck, like in the mud, a golden fleck, like hands in prayer. and thoughts in check. I step forward with all my wits and will. Everything I ever loved, closer still, in a smile spreads across my lips, still caressing with my fingertips, feeling beautiful, free and unafraid to meet the promise that I made. Static on my blade on the last day of the morning. Yes, this is the real vinyl playing. Not actually the audio, but I've got a camera set up on a on a on a record player on the other side of the studio here, and spinning the real copy of the vinyl. And I see that Amy, you've mentioned you'd like to know about the cover art. Here you go. Look. Where we are right now, this is my music studio, and right below me is my wife's art studio. My wife is an amazing painter. She paints all the time, whether she's doing some wild, vast, complicated, handmade painting with coloured pencils, where she's made these massive coloured pencils things that she actually hurt herself by pressing so hard and using so many pencils on this crazy thing. Or whether it's doing these characters and all of her wild abstract experiments. She's just a real creative force. And yeah, this is her work, which is it had to be that way, because as Mish, you've mentioned here in the comments, Lindsay wrote the words to this record, and you wondered if that was the case for every song. It's certainly the case for almost all of it. You won't be able to read this, but have a quick read. Yeah, you won't be able to see it, but yeah, she did. She wrote the words on pretty much everything. Oh. Is it going to stay? Yeah. I wrote the lyrics on one song, Ordinary Dryness. And the rest were her words. Inner world, how do I land? Last day of mourning, the center, the night, actually capture the moon, never agree to play. And I actually did write the words to The Night I Went Crazy with her help. So it's just one of those things where we just... we have so much in, obviously we've been together a long time. There's an intimacy there, an understanding and a lot of respect. I have a tremendous amount of respect for her as an artist and as a lyricist. I took her words to make these songs. That's kind of how they began. They were the seeds of the songs always. And I felt this crazy responsibility to not diminish her sentiments, and to essentially to fill them in, to make them into music, to set them into another dimension. And I just love that process. It is something that is, it's like when someone hands you something very precious and you feel the burden of not breaking it, but also you want to celebrate it and you want to love it. So yeah, that's how it was, working with her. And someone in the comments, Amy, who said her pictures are her photos, sorry, you should say photos to distinguish it, yeah, are amazing too. Of course, yeah, she and I have done many pictures. She's an amazing photographer. I think her heart is in painting and art making more these days, but she's always incredible when she gets behind the lens. Yeah, you want to know who mixed it? I mixed it. I mixed the record. Yeah, I mixed it at home. Just, in my old room, which was definitely a challenge. It was a lot of work to get it all to a place where I was happy with it. But yeah, something I felt only really I could do. You know, this next song is an example of, you know, something technical. Oh, have I mixed my own records before? Yeah, I've mixed. I did mix Building a Beginning with my good friend Jake Aaron. That was a kind of collaboration. And you know, before that, I also mixed stuff with Justin Stanley for the Jamie Liddell record. We did that. I used to have a big SSL console in my studio, a big 56 channel E series. And, you know, you got to mix if you have that, right? So, yeah, I've done a fair bit of mixing at this point. It's definitely not my forte. I overthink stuff really, really easily. And in fact, I should give a shout out to Jake Aaron for this record, because, like, in the middle of the night, I'll be like, Jake, well, is the piano too loud on this? I'd send him mixes and he'd be like, it is too loud and it's too much 200 hertz. And I'll be like, thanks, Jake. So, yeah, you need these friends in your life, these people that you can call on when you're having a moment of doubt, which happens to me quite a lot, especially if I'm the one mixing it. In the future, would I mix it again? No, I definitely would not. I'd like to be there as part of the mix process. I was just trying to sort of feel like I had a hand in it all, but yeah. And sometimes you've got to learn to let go. And in fact, before I play this next song, it's kind of an opportunity for me to mention the mastering engineers involved in this record, with Heber Kadri and Pete Lyman. Pete did the vinyl lacquer, and there's a special production that goes on, a special master that happens with vinyl. It's a bit less limited, so he took care of that, and also Heber Kadri, like, who's a wonderful woman, an amazing mastering engineer. I'm sure you've heard her name before. Anyone who's heard any of the indie releases, I mean, she's been involved in so many great records at this point. Great engineer. And she really helped me with this song, because this was a case in point where I just got to the point where I was like, I just can't mix this song. I'm having a problem. And I need to give a shout out to Raven Bush. I feel like I'm giving everyone their proper shout out. I haven't shouted out Molly Bath, who is the flute player that you would have heard on a Choraleme song, and she lives down the road, and just had a dinner with her and her husband the other night. Lovely lady, an amazing talent. I could have done so much more with Molly had I sort of known, and obviously, you know, I like flutes, so there should be more with her. And but yeah, Heber helped me take this one over the finish line. The song called The Centre. Actually, I'm going to flip over the record. Hang on, bear with me. I'm going to flip it over. Hang on, I'll put it onto to vinyl cam. Let's flip it over, because it's the other side of the record now. Vinyl cam. There it is. The Centre. Let's have The Centre, shall we? Here it is. Whew, man. Yeah, that one, I always felt that song had to like really like wallop you, you know, and for some reason that was a classic example of one that I was always sort of second guessing myself about in terms of like kind of taking it over the finish line and mixing it and all of that. So yeah, Heba really helped there. She just kind of took some 4 stems, I think, and just kind of leveled them for the final master. Yeah, and I did a live show. Some of you might have seen the YouTube videos of it, and this was a song that came out so well. I remember it was actually a really great feeling to be able to channel the energy I knew this song had with a bunch of musicians live, and it feel as powerful as I kind of imagined. I was really like pretty moved by the experience, just kind of like feeling the waves of sound just like pummel me from behind as I was singing, and I was like, I just I was loving that. And this was a real special song to me. So yeah. The center, it kind of does fit rather neatly into the center of the album, and it was a funny song to write. It was one of those where I again had started playing something on the piano, as pretty much happened with every song on this album, and once I got the loop of that happening and there was a few words, I sung that vocal like at the piano. I think I sat at the piano. I was at the piano anyway. I just sort of did a take. And I just had nothing. All I had was the words and the piano, and that recording right there was the one. I just left it. I didn't want to touch it. I just thought that feels like the song. That feels like the way it should be, and that doesn't happen very often. In fact, I mean, it happens sometimes, but it was a rare moment. I thought, I've caught something here, and I don't want to touch it. And I was a little bit worried when I was going to do it live that I wasn't going to bring that back. But I have to admit, I think I may have sung it better in the live version than I did on record. Which is, you know, this goes to show that sometimes I was holding it as this very precious thing. I didn't want to sort of touch it almost. But yeah. It's one of those things. Let me see if I can get any more comments before I move on to the next one. I think we're up to date with the comments. Someone mentioned, did the German setup influence this record? For those of you who don't know, possibly if you listen to my podcast and follow me in other channels like Instagram and stuff, I've become fascinated by the music of Rodalius, thanks to Rob Berger, who's a big, musician on this record and just in general in my life. He turned me on to Rodalius, he's still alive. He's about 92 and still playing, and he was involved in some amazing bands like Harmonia, Cluster, and did a lot of solo work himself in the 70s, which I love. And it features primarily like Farfisa instruments, like the 222 organ, the professional organ, which also Can used a lot, and Schmidt, and the professional piano, another favorite from the Can world. And I now own both of those instruments, although the only one that works currently is the Farfisa organ, the professional organ. And I've got it hooked up to a very similar sort of setup to him. I didn't have any of that at the time of making this record. I'm looking through, and the date on Never Agreed to Play or some of these songs is September 2021. Yeah, it was a weird one. This record was done in 2022. Don't ask me. Don't ask me what happened. Honestly, I have no idea why it took so long to put out. But at which point I should thank, as you might be able to see on this record spinning, TODO Records, from Simon Halliday and his wife Misha. Yeah, they've been really really good to me. I've known Simon a long time. We used to kind of hang out back when I was on Warp Records, and he became the head honcho at 4AD Records before now going on to form a new label called TODO, and I'm happy to be number 1. 001 is Places of Unknowing, so thanks to them to, have faith in me and this record. It's a tricky business out there sometimes. Even if you have music that you believe in deeply, you can often feel like it's falling on deaf ears a little bit. Of course, there's a lot going on. It's a noisy world. And sometimes a record that moves slowly like this one, that doesn't have the instant gratification of a 10-second soundbite clip, does demand a little bit of, quiet listening. It's sometimes hard to convince people of its merits. But they really got behind it. This next song is called The Night I Went Crazy. It's quite a short number. And there's, I wrote the lyrics to this one with a little help from Lindsay, but it's about someone that came over that kind of gave me some thoughts. Yeah, The Night I Went Crazy. Up. It's sometimes tricky to play these songs in isolation and then stop them, because I feel like that's a good example of where the flow of the album really makes that song sit well. And it's a certain kind of mood, that one. But again, an opportunity to use percussion and sort of blend that with electronics. It's a very strange little tonal world, that. And sometimes I just got fascinated by these things. Someone's asking if I would like to consider a remix album. Yeah, thanks, The Void. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. I'd have to have a word with the guys at TODO, because the only thing stopping something like that is budget, to be honest. Because there's someone like Fortet, Kieran, who's definitely a friend of mine, and and Clark, also another friend. Both of them have been on the podcast, of course, hanging out with Audiophiles. Shout out to the pod. and that's a bit weird, shouting myself out. But yeah, it would be great. Man, it would actually be a real treat. It's not a bad idea. Let's think about that. Just the other day, thanks, Avoid. It's you were number 1 on this stream as well. It tells me. I didn't know that I could see that, but you've got a got a little crown by you. You were right here in the early days, obviously, of this broadcast. Thank you. I think that's what it means. Anyway, thanks for being here so early, and thanks for tuning in, everyone, on a Sunday. I think this recording will remain up, so, that's useful. And I'll get on with it before I take up too much time with my talking. This song is called Capture the Moon. We're getting close to the end of the album here. It's actually quite a short playing record, very intense. It's like a full-on chocolate box of some pretty intense numbers. And this one's called Capture the Moon. It was the latest single, came out just a few days ago. It features the piano playing of Rob Berger in the house on the Steinway that I was talking about. This is one of the only significant recordings of that piano that I have. So it has a special place in my heart. Also features the strings of Raven Bush. Raven Bush is related to Kate Bush, which is quite a nice little fun fact. And as it seems runs through the family, he has an incredible gift. And we had an amazing time. I loved working with Raven. I would send him ideas, sometimes, scored out pieces, and sometimes something free. And this is what we came up with. Oh, TODO was saying let's do it on the remixes, so thanks, The Void. Let's see what we can do there. I think that's a good idea. Yeah, maybe someone could do this one. Capture the Moon, here we go. In the starlight, under sweet surrender, like no feeling I've ever had, being guided towards the burning question, will I know when it's time to go? Mother Nature holds my hand to assure me she understands how afraid I am. They wanted to capture the moon, reaching in a raisin sky, touching hands with an angel who held on tight. I don't know why you had to go, but something has to die for something to grow. Mother Nature holds my hand to assure me she understands how afraid I am. They wanted to capture the moon, reaching in a raisin sky, touching hands with an angel who held on tight. Yeah, Ethan on bass. It's just crazy. I actually found a little bit of the solo track of the bass Like I was really happy. Well, when we did this, it was like the song was tracked on piano and everything, and yeah, but there was no bass. So Ethan had come over. Actually, we tracked this bass at Rob's house, and we're just sort of making it up as we went along. But I would sing stuff to Ethan essentially, like and like some musicians can just hang with you when you do that. You know, I would say to Ethan like, okay, like, and like, and he'll just be like, yep, and then, you know, and then he'd end up having. That's so nice, isn't it? It's just a nice line with the vocal. They wanted to capture the moon, touching hands with an angel held on tight. Forgot the words, but you know, you get the idea. Ethan, when you find those musicians, it's just a true pleasure to sort of have a chance to work with them. Thanks for tuning in for this, by the way. The strings on that one were another cool like opportunity for me to send Raven some multi-track vocals. Essentially, I'd sing them, and then he'd like replay them. So it was, it was like this. So here comes the chorus. They wanted to capture reaching in the sky, touching hands with held on tight. I don't know you had to go, but something has to die for something to grow. Yeah, nice. Another opportunity to hear Raven Bush in action. What a treat. So, moving on. This one's quite an odd one. I found this one really interesting to do. And this took on many an iteration. As you can probably hear, I kind of wanted it to be a very immersive sort of headphone listen that was not truncated. It's a very sort of long form piece with kind of like a lot of micro sound and lots of small detail in the ambience. And I didn't know how to kind of link all the sections together until I used this crazy drum machine called the Pulsar 23, which is this Russian, relatively modern but crazy powerful machine that kind of like brought a lot of fire to the mix. Not many of these songs get into that kind of terrain, so this one is quite unique in a way, and I'd kind of wanted it to almost sort of rock along. There's a sort of percussion section, which I'll play you that actually before you hear the song. Might as well, because we're in a... Hang on a minute, do I have it? Oh yes, I do. Hang on a minute, where is it? So it's going to be the mini beat, I call it. Yeah, the mini beat. It was a kind of a percussion table, essentially. Me, Rob, Lee, Vincent, and Ji Hei Jung were kind of all stood around at Sound Emporium with like various bits and bobs. Like I had this clapper thing, we had glasses, we had bells. Kind of made this kind of beat. Those shakers and then I kind of processed it quite heavily. But all this stuff is a satisfying little beat. Yeah. There's a lot of this sort of mini worlds going on in this song. It's a satisfying little thing, but see if you can find it in the main song. This one's Never Agreed to Play.
I don't understand what this new behavior really means. If you're trying to confuse me, you found another way to abuse me. Always touching where it hurts, pressing on the wound, amplify the pain that will never really heal. Let me heal and let me grieve. Without you, it's all twisted up. First you fill my cup and throw it in my face. It was a chase. Now I'm tangled in your web. Half alive, but mostly dead inside. But can't you leave it alone? Just let me go, let me wander off. And
Tyler Scott asked what I use for the vocal processing on this. I don't know. I think it was actually, this one was a real sort of digital affair, actually. This one was really like an opportunity to sort of do a lot of sort of almost more sort of what I'm very used to, having worked with Super Collider. Actually hearing the ending of that, it was giving me flashbacks to working with Christian Vogel back in the day when we did the Super Collider stuff. All of this very sort of detail-oriented, automated work on small parts that all kind of interweave with each other. It was very much that. I think the processing and all of the kind of stuff that you'll hear is all computer generated on this one. I did it all in Pro Tools. I don't tend to use Pro Tools that much, but I do use it for the podcast, and I use it for mixing. And actually, when I was doing these tracks, I kind of tied everything together in Pro Tools, and yeah, it was. I do love it. I do love it as a world to work in. It's very familiar, and so yeah, I had all of the stuff from the Sound Emporium, which was kind of unprocessed, very natural sounding sort of percussion. And then I kind of did a lot of sort of more like bit reduction and sort of gentle work. I remember actually Cy Bonobo came over when I was doing the pod with him, and he came to my house here in Nashville. He had a show in Nashville, and I played him this in an early incarnation because I kind of felt a bit of a Bonobo vibe to it in a way, And yeah, he had some interesting points to make about it. I can't remember what they were now, but I think I was sort of channeling a bit of that kind of world as well. So something a little bit different. And I just really wanted it to be sort of, and I think maybe someone's asked about like my connection to sort of the kind of new place that I'm in, I guess recently, of late, since I stopped working on this album a couple of years ago. I've been getting increasingly into sort of quite stretched out work and like taking my time a lot more. Basically the antithesis of the short attention span music that would probably do really well out there. I'm going more into the to the long form and deeper kind of realms of micro movement, and this was probably a beginning along those roads. We're on to the last track. It's called Ordinary Dryness, and this one is my mum's favourite, which is actually a shocker to me, but it makes me very happy as well because it is an odd one. It's an oddball track, and it was definitely a sort of direct lyric from me about the sensations I had at that time, just living, getting through each day. I mean, it's called Ordinary Dryness, which is quite an odd thing. And someone was asking, did I ever sing into the binaural head? This song was actually the only track where I literally did all the vocals into the head. I'd record one into the left ear and then double it on the right ear. So it's definitely good in headphones, this. And it's actually also, aside from the center, which has this lush pad at the end, which is completely generated by this rather imposing looking modular synth. I didn't really have an opportunity for whatever reason to sort of fit that in such a bold way, or make it the star of the show, I suppose I should say, until I did this song. Ordinary Dryness is completely a patch that I made on the modular synthesizer, and I was glad that I managed to get something in from that world, because it was definitely filling a lot of my time at that point. And, stretching out, man. That's what we've been doing. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in for this. It's really nice to chat with you and to play all this music again. It's always a crazy trip down memory lane for me. I went through a lot doing this record, and it's lovely to hear all your feedback and your kind words about it. And yeah, I'll leave you with this one, Ordinary Dryness. I'll come back at the end to say some goodbyes, but here's my mum's favourite, the modular synth one. Yeah, here we go.
ordinary dryness, ordinary dryness, ordinary dryness, circles on the rise, circles on the rise. Until it's broken, until it's broken.
Rob Berger playing us out. I always love that little ending. He was, hey, there's the connection to the German setup for everyone. The RMI is the RMI is on that one, and is featured pretty much as the main instrument on that. Sorry, I'm just looking at the comments. I'm losing my train of thought here. Yeah, Mum's got good taste. It was an odd one, and in fact, I was always worried how we were going to perform that song live when we did the show at the Turner Hall here in Nashville. And so Pascal Leboeuf, who I've only mentioned briefly, but really I ought to give him so many props. He was, a huge player in all of this, not only literally playing the piano and instruments, but just translating my ideas and like being the sort of bridge between me and the classical musicians. And then that was sort of really evidenced when we tried to do the live show, where it became like a challenge to sort of take songs that were written for strings, written for other instruments that we didn't have available for the show. Mostly we had woodwind. So check this out. This is how he did this intro. I'll play the original one. You know, this is the one from Ordinary Dryness we just heard. That kind of... This is like the synth generated one. And then we went to this woodwind version, which actually sounds so good. Remix. Here's a remix for you, Rob. Yeah, man, this came out so well.
Ordinary dryness, ordinary dryness, ordinary dryness, ordinary dryness, ordinary dryness.
Anyway, I won't play all of that version. Just wanted to give you a little taste of it. The full live show, I think, is going to come out at some point. I've been asked, will this be available for digital purchase anywhere besides Apple Music at some point? That's not really a question I can answer outside of the record label's decisions, I suppose. Keep an eye out on that. If there are changes in that, I'll certainly let you know. But yes, what a journey. And it's a funny thing. It's available everywhere, I'm told now, which is great. So yeah, please go and check it out however you see fit. It's a really weird feeling to me, having lived with these songs for so many years. Like I say, the sessions date back to 2021. Now, 4 years later, the music surfaces, but it's clearly, I think you'll probably all agree that this is not the kind of music that you hear every day. I certainly will probably not ever be capable of making something quite like this again. It was a really specific time period, a really specific collection of musicians that had a sort of availability, and this is a sort of relatively unrepeatable thing. I feel very proud of it. I feel like this is a big work for me, somewhat of a kind of career defining moment, having worked in music for so many years and having evolved to the point where I felt like I could do this. And yeah, it's a personal one, especially because of all the work I did with my wife. And yeah, thank you so much, guys, for all your support and for all the good vibes. And hey, I'll be doing some pods soon. Maybe I'll find an opportunity to kind of share some more of the inner workings of the songs, because that was fun. Like, just to sort of go a little bit behind the scenes. Maybe I'll do a little session breakdown of a couple of the songs, just to sort of show you how it came together. And yeah, thanks, guys. This time I'll hit stop on the streaming, and it won't be the it won't be the original stream link. We live and learn. Thank you, guys. Goodbye.